I'm glad you guys are here this morning. Tomorrow is going to be MLK Junior Day and his celebration of his birthday. And so I think that it's very fitting where we are in the lectionary today. If you don't know what the lectionary is, it is a compilation of lessons from the Old Testament and the New Testament that are kind of compiled for the entire year. And so a lot of, mostly liturgical churches will follow the lectionary. But the Disciples of Christ, a lot of Christian churches do the same thing. So we like to do that here, and that's kind of what we like to follow along. So there's different, we don't read through all of the lessons, but I usually just pick one and kind of hone in on that and say, all right, this is where we're going to camp out today. So we're going to camp out today in John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11 is where we are in the lectionary. So let me read this first, and then I want to talk about this idea of the wine for the wedding, and we're going to pull that into Martin Luther King Jr. and some of those things, and it should be interesting to see what happens. But let's read this. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And Jesus and his disciples also had been invited to the wedding. And when the wine gave out, I just think that's a funny way to say they were out of wine. But sometimes, have you noticed that sometimes in your life, just the wine gives out, right? It's like it just doesn't work anymore. It doesn't kind of pack the same fun. But when the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and me? My hour has not yet come." And his mother looked at him the way only mothers can. And then she said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now, standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification. So cleansing, purifying, kind of washing, the things that they do to enter into any kind of meal that they would take. These are purifying rituals, right? Each holding 20 or 30 gallons. And Jesus said to them, "Fill these jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it, and when the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn it, they knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves a good wine first, and then after everyone's plastered, then the inferior wine after the guests have become plastered." Now, anyways, "But you have kept the good wine until now." And Jesus did this. The first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So I love this story. There's all kinds of things going on in this story. There's all kinds of things that we can glean from it and we can learn from it. I love the fact that we see that this is the first of his signs. So we are already being told by John that in John, this is John chapter 2. So we're being told by John that there are going to be multiple signs that John is going to use, some things that Jesus does as signs to something bigger. Does that make sense? Are you with me? So we have that. This is the first one. So this is not just about a wedding that they went to in Cana and then the wine gave out. All right? This is a sign. This is a living parable about something much bigger than just they happened to be at a wedding where they ran out of wine and Jesus did something cool. Right? So it's bigger than that. So we want to kind of go deeper and say, okay, well, it's a sign. It's a sign to what? Why would he do this particular sign? What's going on here? Why is that happening? So we can kind of unpack that. The other thing I love is I love how John and how Jesus and how so much of the New Testament, especially around the life of Jesus, is extremely empowering of women. And I think we would miss the point if we skip over how powerful it is that Jesus himself was kind of basically chastised by his mother here because Jesus was like, "I'm not going to do anything about it," and his mom's like, "Yeah, you are." And so there's this powerful powerful kind of moment between Jesus being parented by Miriam. I like to call her Miriam, not Mary, because Miriam, she was a young Jewish woman. Remember, she was probably 14 or 15 years old when she had Jesus, all right? And so she's not a whole lot older than Jesus, all right? She's just probably 15, 16 years older at the most. And so she's a powerful young Jewish woman, and she'd grown up with Jesus, and she had probably seen Jesus do things, right? Like, because when the wine went out, like, she automatically knew, you're going to do some of the stuff that you do around the house, you're going to do that now. Like, I can just see that Jesus, when stuff happens around the house, and she's like, this ain't going to make it. He's like, all right, we'll just go in and look, there's going to be more flour. It's just it's like she knew that Jesus could do this, right? Now, this is like one of the very first miracles that's recorded in Scripture about Jesus doing it. But Miriam had no problem knowing that Jesus was going to do something and could do something. That meant that she was around Jesus growing up, and Jesus did it. I think it's the Gospel of Thomas, which is not in the canon, but the Gospel of Thomas is a book that's written, and it talks about Jesus as a young boy, and how he would find birds that were dead, and he would resurrect them, and all his friends would be like, what? And it was like causing trouble at school, because people were saying, Jesus is like raising dead pigeons, and stuff like that. And it was just a weird, we don't see that in the Bible. We don't have stories of that. But typically, or realistically, what's happening here with Miriam is that she knows Jesus can do something about this. Right? Are you with me? I mean, there's not like a local Walmart or something that he can go down and buy a bunch of wine, all right? Like, she knew he's going to do a miracle. And I love that Jesus was like, hey, like, this isn't what I do. This is not. And she's like, yeah, you're going to do something. You can do something now. And then she turns to the servants and says, do whatever he says, right? Because she knows, like, I gave him the look. He's going to do something. I love it. I love the power that the gospel gives women. Are you with me? I love the power that Jesus instills in women in Scripture. And I don't know how we went so far astray that now the church that bears the name of Jesus are so many of our iterations of church withhold women from ministry and power and influence, and it's ridiculous, because that is not the heart of Jesus. All right? So how's that for a little bit of, that's another thing that we can talk about. I think it's amazing. But I think there's even something deeper going on here in this story. And what I want to key on is that you've got these 6 massive purification bowls, okay? And these things, 20, 30 gallons each. And what those were for was for purification, was for washing and cleansing. And that was for the Jewish people, all right? And when you look at what was going on, you're looking at that here are these things that are meant to get you clean, that are meant to kind of, you do these purification rituals kind of in a nod to the God that you belong to, but also the God that is in you. It's representing that we're washed and we're clean because of our relationship with God, and me and God in me type of thing. Are you with me? And so it was very important that they did these purifications. It was a thing that washed them and cleansed them. It was an outward, we would call it today a sacrament. It is an outward action of an inward faith or an inward grace. Are you with me? So, for example, we do this still to this day with baptism. So when we go into the waters of baptism, that is a sacrament. It is an outward sign of something that has happened inward. That's what these purification bowls were about. Are you with me? It was an outward sign. They were washing in a certain way their hands, their feet, their heads, their beards, their bodies, to enter into a party, to enter into a meal together that was holy, that was set aside, that was an outward expression of something that had happened to them inward. Are you with me? But also, it's interesting because those bowls were also, if you will, in a way, they were a dividing wall. They were a dividing wall in the sense that Jews that did this were cleansed, but anyone outside of those purification rituals were not cleansed. So it was a very easy way, if you're not careful, it could become this, we're in and they're out. We're in and they're out. This purification would set up a barrier between those who were okay and those who were not okay. It was very obvious. Those who cleansed are ritually cleansed and all right and clean and godly. Those who did not were not. They were outside. They were unclean. They were the uncircumcised Philistines, if you will, right? They were the dirty and the sinners and the poor and the wretched and the barbarians and the savages that were outside of this group that had been cleansed. And what is interesting is that Jesus turns that water, the water of purification, he turns it into wine. Now, what is wine? What does it represent in the New Testament? Blood. I mean, a lot of times it's just wine. But a lot of times, like we're getting ready at the end of our service to have a meal with bread and wine, or juice, but bread and wine. And that represents, when we hold up that chalice and we say, behold, this is the what? My blood that is shed for you. That cleanses you, that purifies you, right? Are you with me? So we still, to this day, we have this blood that is the purification, that is the thing. And so it's interesting that Jesus turns this water that was purification water, he turns it to wine, which I think part of the sign is that he's pointing to, my blood is the thing that cleanses all of us. Amen. All right, so another thing, I got one amen. Oh, did you? Okay, I got two. Can I get three? Do I hear three? Three amen, three. Give me four. Dave, can you give me my water, please? Speaking of water, starting to choke up. Yeah, this is water. this is water. Now, so I was thinking about this week, I was thinking about Martin Luther King Jr. I was thinking about the resistance to hatred and being non-violent in our resistance, being loving in our resistance, but breaking down walls and barriers. And I had lunch with Richard Bowles, my good friend who's actually here this morning. Hey, brother. And so you can credit Richard. If you don't like it, it was his fault. If you like it, I just took what he said and I made it good. Anyways, this was a beautiful thing that he said. I love this. And he said, you know, those basins of water were divisions. They were walls between those clean and unclean. But maybe what Jesus is doing at this wedding, in changing it to wine, in changing it to the best wine, in changing it to where this wedding, they all were just partying. Maybe what Jesus is saying here is that celebration is a form of resistance. And I was like, man, that's good. Celebration as resistance. See, we live in a culture that resistance means that we get enraged and we get angry at the thing that is not the way that we think it should be. We get enraged at injustice. We get angry at people that don't act like us. We get angry at people who don't do what we think they should do. We get mad, and what we do is we seek out in social media and in other areas things that look unlike us, and what we do is we allow for ourselves to get more and more angry, more and more incensed, more and more enraged, and we then become a part of the problem and not a solution. Because if you're looking at the other side and saying, you're horrible, and you have hatred, and you have anger, and you're wanting those people to suffer, then how are we any better than the people that we say are on the other side? See, we feel like resistance is the thing that we get angry with. I mean, both sides are just, we get more and more polarized in this country. We get further and further apart. We saw this even this weekend with the March for Life and the Women's March. And we see things that happen. And people, and I'm not even going to get into all that stuff because some of you might not even know, but just trust me, there's a lot of hate out there. And there's people that are going back and forth and back and forth. And maybe what Jesus is doing at this wedding is he's saying there's a celebration. And celebration is a form of resistance. Are you with me? It's okay. It's going to be all right. Sometimes you cry at church. Right? It's just a bad morning, right? But here's what I want you to see. Resistance to injustice and resistance to the attitude that says, I'm in and you're out. There's various forms of things that we can do to resist hatred. And I think one of the greatest ones is we've got to learn how to party and celebrate with one another and invite everyone in. Are you with me? Yeah. Are you with me? Now, I don't know about this wedding. I don't know if everyone in the wedding was Jewish and all of them used the water that was in those basins for ritual cleansing. But I do know this. What if there were not people that were Jewish that were there? They didn't partake of those basins when they first walked in because they weren't Jewish. But guess what everybody got to partake in from those basins? The wine. The celebration together. The party together. See, Jesus was breaking down the dividing walls. He's saying, you think it's that, well, I'm Jewish, so I'm in. Well, I'm Christian, so I'm in. Well, no, I'm Muslim, so I'm in. Well, no, I'm this, so I'm in. I'm that, I figured it out. No. See, what Jesus is saying is that everyone is invited to the table. Celebration is a form of resistance. Why? Why did Jesus party? Why did Jesus eat with people? Because when you hang out with someone and you spend time with someone and you listen to someone, it breaks down the walls of hate. Amen. Are you with me? And that's what Martin Luther King Jr. was all about. It's all about breaking down these walls. It's not about saying, wait a minute, we're better than you. No, it's just saying we're all together. The great command that says, to love one another as yourself. See, when you love someone else as yourself, that means that I'm loving you as myself. Meaning, you are an extension of me. Does that make sense? It means that you and I are together. We are of the same dust. We're of the same thing. So when we sit down together and when we spend time together and I learn to love you as myself, recognizing, wait a minute, you have the same hopes and desires and dreams and fears that I do. But see, if I just look at you and say, oh, well, no, you're this, or you're that, or you're that group, or you believe that, or you voted this way, or you think that, then I'm never talking to you, though. Are you with me? And there's something about sitting down and having a meal and drinking a glass of wine, which some of us don't, you know what I mean. But there's something about sitting down and eating and drinking together, a celebration that breaks down the walls. Maybe celebration is a form of resistance. Maybe instead of yelling back and forth across the way, we should say, hey, let's get some ice cream. Because it's hard to hate somebody when you're eating ice cream. Amen? Amen? Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. I love Bernice King, who's the daughter. Is it daughter or granddaughter? Daughter of King. She said, I want to remind you of a few things about Martin Luther King as we go into the celebration of his birthday. And so many people will be quoting and putting quotes of MLK up on their social media and different things like that. And she says, so I want to just remind us of a couple of things about him. He was a purveyor of peace, but it is contrary to the authentic king to call for peace without being a doer and a seeker of justice. Amen? He said, true peace is not merely the absence of tension, It is the presence of justice. See, it's moving towards the thing instead of just saying, "Well, I don't want to." No, we move towards that. He was a love and a truth revolutionary. He taught, led, and worked for the eradication of white supremacy, not the eradication of white people. He believed we should engage each other on the high plane of dignity and discipline, yet he understood that there are those who delay and deny justice because they are more devoted to order than to justice. He was anti-racism, not anti-other races. He believed that while we must demand freedom from the oppressor, we must be careful not to oppress others in the process. Amen. Hello? When we resist, see, that's what I'm talking about. I'm scared of the resistance in this country right now. Although I lean towards what they are saying. Listen. I'm scared that we will become the very same thing that we say we hate. I'm scared that we, in our resistance of things that we see that are unjust, that we will become hateful and enraged and not be willing to be people who will celebrate with the other side also. See, that's the hard work of justice. That's the hard work of Jesus. Jesus says, let's have wine for all. Let's break down the dividing walls. Let's party together. Remember, one of the things that they said about Jesus is like, how can he be the Messiah? He's a partier. Well, I mean, if that's the worst thing they ever say about me, then so be it. Like, how can he be really a Christian? He hangs out with all kinds of people. She loves everybody. As if it's like, are you listening to what you're saying? Like, you're literally upset that this person loves everyone on both sides. Hello? He believed that our issue is not a lack of resources to eradicate poverty and other social evils, but a lack of will. And then she says, I love this, we can, #build the will. Isn't that good? I love that. Build the will. We need to have the will that says, I want to be a person of resistance, resisting racism, sexism, religionism. And I love this. This is her last one. She said, he was not passive. Non-violence is not passive. It is active, principled, and listen to this, love-centered non-cooperation with evil. Let me read that again. Non-violence is not passive. It is active, principled, love-centered non-cooperation with evil. I want to be active. I want to be principled. I want to be love-centered in my non-cooperation with the systems of evil that we encounter today. And maybe, just maybe, celebration is a great way to resist hatred. Is we will celebrate the Lord's table. This is a celebration. This meal is a form of resistance. Did you guys know that? This meal says that every one of us is welcome at the table. This meal says that God loves all of us, no matter what our race, our creed, our religion, our tribe, our tongue. Doesn't matter if we're straight or LGBTQ. It doesn't matter if I am rich or poor. It doesn't matter if I'm educated or I never went to school. We're all loved the same. We're all welcome to the table. Let's all celebrate. And in that celebration, when we see that all of us are welcome, that all of us are partaking of this meal, that all of us are invited to this party, that we recognize, wait a minute, we're all the same. There is no reason to hate the other because there is no such thing as the other. You are me. Me are you. Are you with me? We are the same. And so we love to have this meal together because it is a celebration, and it is a celebration as resistance to hate and violence and injustice. May we be people who are always welcoming and always providing and always celebrating and resisting hatred and evil in this world. Amen? Let's stand.